here we go, people. It's time for some day drinking podcast time. I mean, water and coffee so far. I might get a cocktail here in a minute. We'll see. It's Almost an Agreement. Sorry for coming to you a little late today. We have some scheduling issues, but we're still here for our weekly update of ridiculousness. Check us out at almostanagreement.com. Go to your favorite podcast provider. Give us a like and follow there. So let's tell your friends about us. Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube are also places you can connect with us. And almostanagreement@gmail.com. You can email me about how stupid I am, all you like. So anyway, we're going to check in on balloons from outer space, and I don't know. So anyway, we'll talk about what we talk about. Anyway, here we go, podcast. Did you hear how much better that percussion was?
Is that better?
What's up, Stanley? How you doing, buddy?
You were doing it on the table. I was trying to do it on the mic. Different surface.
I'm fine. Okay. Regardless of that, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a week of weeks. The
Week of weeks.
The stuff continues to happen, I guess. I don't know. You sent me that lawyer video about balloons, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it kind of came down to the synopsis of...
I thought it was interesting to see kind of like the nuances of it.
Well, so the take
really came down to, if it was meteorological, but it also says in this subsection...
Right, it's
within this...
Right, according to, like, if you take China's spokesperson's word for it that it was a weather balloon... Well, no, not even that it was a weather balloon, that it was a civilian craft.
Right.
By rule, it's an act of war to have shot it down. If you're going to call it a weather balloon, it has to be exclusively for weather balloon service... and smaller than 4 kilograms, which 3 school buses is not going to be smaller than 4 kilograms no matter how you slice it.
Right.
And China said it was mainly, and, you know, the legalese terms mainly and exclusively are significantly different terms.
Right.
So if it is mainly but does other things, it is no longer under the weather balloon category. And so really, like, I watched that video, and it was interesting. It's neat going through some of the little subset of international agreements of civil air travel and stuff like that.
Of what laws that would actually apply, you know, international and federal laws. Right.
And, you know, and so, but it still comes down to nobody like...
Still kind of broke it down, I guess, internationally. We have a sovereign airspace, essentially.
Right. And from whether I get it, we had the right to do it, and it's a political question on whether we should or shouldn't have, not whether we legally could or couldn't. Yeah. Is really what it broke down to me, is that this is a politics thing. Is this, I think he concluded with it, like, is this just a thing and it happened and we're going to let it slide, or is this a step in escalation towards further?
Because they've already come out and said, like, oh, well, the U.S. has been doing it to us. So it's kind of like tit for tat.
Right. Which apparently I didn't know there was some sort of like agreement in Cold War stuff in spying where they're like, yeah, we agree that, like, free airspace agreement or something like that is what he called it.
Yeah, I think it'd be something like that.
You know, and again, it goes to one of those fun little questions. It's like, well...
But I think that was, like, non-weaponized, I guess, like spy planes, basically.
Right. At what altitude does it, you know...
Right.
Where there's no written law or agreement on where the altitude of sovereignty ends. And so the only written one is, like, 7 miles or something. So, like, you are literally in orbit. You are no longer...
Right, yeah.
You're in outer space by definition, and then... your sovereign airspace ends, essentially, is where that thing went. So, I don't know. It's crazy. There's been like 5 more now.
Has it been that much?
There's been like, what? The one that it's the Canada one? The one they shot down in like Manitoba or whatever?
I heard they missed on the first missile.
Right. You know how much that missile cost?
Don't know.
$500,000.
Oh.
A $500,000 missile can't hit. And so... why does it cost $500,000 if you can't hit a balloon? A big-ass balloon. It's not like we're talking about a kid's party balloon here.
That's the weird thing about it going so damn slow.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they shit it with like a jet going. I don't know how fast.
There was some leaked or whatever, or maybe an interview, like an actual interview with one of the pilot drivers talking about how it's really hard to track because you can't. Right. You have to pass it and come back and pass it and come back and pass it and come back over and over again.
I think even like the FAA and whoever, does kind of, airspace monitoring throughout the U.S. and said, they've kind of had to change their parameters, the way the radar's kind of set up. It's not typically set up to detect craft moving.
Yeah, that was what NORAD or whatever said, that they changed the settings.
Yeah.
And one of my podcast jokes was like, well, they're just going to change the setting back so we don't have to deal with this anymore. Because obviously, like what it seems apparent to me, maybe obviously is an overstatement, but what seems apparent to me is that this has been a regular occurring thing for a decade or so at least. That there have been balloons, whether actual weather balloons or spy balloons or whatever combination of things, that is a fairly regular occurrence. And for whatever reason, NORAD or whoever didn't set their machines to track them, because it's like, whatever. And again, going into some of the treaties and agreements made about, weather aircraft and stuff like that.
Maybe they did warn them of it.
Right.
Like, hey, we're doing a weather balloon. It may come your all's way.
Yeah, but
if you see it, wave.
Yeah, so for what, and again, it goes back to what I was saying last week, though. It's like, I think the fact that a civilian saw this one, the first one that they shot down after it got to the coast of Carolinas, turned it into a public conversation. It's like, what the fuck? And everybody's freaking out about it. Justly or not. Yeah. Everybody's freaking out about it, and now they changed their detection devices to be more, what's the word I'm looking for here?
Sensitive?
Yeah, there you go. That's a good word. They changed their devices to be more sensitive, and now we're seeing them like every day. And so it seems to me like this is something that's been going on for a long time, and has been a norm among nations where you just kind of fly these balloons around, whether they're civil or military or not. It's just been kind of we're doing it, you're doing it. Let's just don't make it stupid obvious, and we don't have to deal with the public getting freaked out about it.
I don't think it's that much. No.
What? You don't think that there's that many?
I don't think it's to the point where they're like, whatever you guys do, it just don't let the public see it. As long as the public doesn't see it, we're all cool with all just doing this.
But does that not feel like what happened?
No.
It doesn't feel like that. Okay, so since the first one came out, it's been released that there was at least a couple during the Trump administration that happened that Trump knew about.
And there was one other one.
And then there was some during the Obama administration that Obama knew about. And so it's not an administration thing.
It's anything about Obama. I thought I just saw Trump, and there was one earlier in the Biden administration.
Right. And so maybe I thought I heard something about pre-Trump era stuff. Anyway, but what it seems to me from what I've heard about it is that this seems to be a fairly regular occurrence. And it only became an issue when it became public.
I think it's more of a regular occurrence of it just being actual weather balloons. Because as we've tried to get more and more kind of meteorological data throughout the world.
I'll tell you the one that freaks me out about it is that one of the pilots in a leaked something, which I guess could, it's leaked, so we don't know how, it's not authenticated or whatever, described whichever one he was chasing around not as a balloon, but as like octagonal or something like that, a weird shape with no clear sign of how it was what propulsion system on it.
Yeah, I think I've heard there's been like rumors of it was a UFO, an UFO.
Well, like
which obviously anything that is technically unidentified is a.
Well, they changed the thing. They changed the acronym. It's God, what is it now?
Yeah,
it's like an A. I don't know. They changed the acronym, but it means it's just a new way of saying UFO. But like, what's the spokesperson for the Pentagon or something like that came out, and like the first part is like, just so you guys know before you ask, we have no evidence that this is an alien,
right? That
these are alien craft. To which the media in the room laughed about it. Which, okay, I don't know. I go back and forth. Like I'm not a big UFO person personally, but at the same time, well, what is it? Well, we don't know. Well, then how can you say it isn't if you don't know what it is, or you do know what it is and you don't want to tell us?
I would say from his position, they are more apt to
her. You sexist son of a bitch. Her.
Sorry, there. That was the Averill. Was it the DNI? Director of National Intelligence?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. I don't remember which agency was talking about it, but yeah. Anyway, from their perspective,
I would say they're more apt to make those calls with a high degree of certainty. So they would probably be able to say that that it wasn't an alien craft with a high degree of certainty. It's the only time they will actually come out and say that.
I don't.
Like, most people in that field know that just about any statement cannot be said 100%.
Well, sure, but I don't know. I don't know. Okay, fine. I get what you're saying on that. But I mean, are they going to recover them? Are we going to hear about what it is when they pick them up?
I'm sure, yeah.
Okay. I'm
I
curious.
think they said they've already finished the one off of South Carolina.
Right.
They said they've recovered everything from that. Or everything they've been able to find from that.
I know they said one went down. One they shot down in Lake Erie.
It was like Huron or something. I think that was like near Lake Huron. I don't know if it was actually in the lake.
I think it's in the lake because one of the reports from some sort of Coast Guard naval crew or whatever they're supposed to go out and collect it is the water was choppy, so they couldn't find it. And so, I don't know. It seems like that one. I mean,
one off the coast of Alaska.
Right, one on the Aleutian Islands that's on ice, but they can't get on the ice to get it. Manitoba's millions of square miles of woods and whatnot, and so that one will be tough to find. The Huron or Erie, whichever lake one, but they do. Yeah, I haven't seen much on the recovery of the first one. The first one, big air quotes on first one.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's just a crazy. The whole story's crazy to me.
I mean, I think it is a little bit of, like you said, that a lot of it probably was like going on. No one really thought about it. There's a lot of shit that goes on that
right.
we don't really think about.
Right, and again, on the national security standpoint, and stuff like that, is that something that we need to know about in the public on a regular basis? Nah. But I also kind of get the freak out from the general public.
Well, I mean, I'll see all sorts of weird shit like flying around. I'm like, I can't tell is that an airplane? I don't know. Something really big, what's really high up in the sky, and it's leaving a trail.
Right, and apparently it's not that hard to just, get permission to fly things because, that one guy landed on 40. That was his. I don't remember what it was.
I think he got permission to do that.
Not the landing
part. He called it in
was
like,
but he got permission to fly in the first place. But what I'd heard at least is that was like his 5th emergency landing in like a year and a half or 2 years.
Oh, damn.
And I don't know if it's a plane. Like I didn't hear whether it was the same plane over and over again. So the plane was the problem, or whether it was different planes and it's a pilot issue.
All right.
But the guy's supposed to.
That same shade tree mechanic was like, "Yeah, I fixed it." He's like, "Are you sure?"
The guy that
it's great. Yeah, it's not going to break down on you again.
Yeah, but so the guy that flew it, that was flying it, was an older gentleman, but has had multiple emergency landings in recent history. So. That's why I bring it back local. Go ahead.
Some people, just barely get by any kind of driving test or flying test. I mean, a C is passing.
Yeah. Where in Ohio is your family from?
They're in the Northeast.
So above this situation.
Yeah.
Okay. It's freaky. Like Backroom Knox has been on a crusade.
Yeah, I saw something like the EPA or some big like federal agency had to come out and make some response, because I think there were reports of like somebody's trying to report Nashville was detecting levels of some
TVA.
Shit. And they're like, no, that was TVA came out.
TVA and First Utility is the one I saw at least was a Zachary post where TVA was just to be clear, where we connect with the Ohio River waterway system is way over in western Kentucky, so any of this stuff that's coming down with the water can't get to any of our water. Which, I mean, that's a fair...
Oh, I thought it was an air quality thing.
That's the one, well, at least the one that I'd seen from Zachary.
Maybe I misread it. Maybe it was just a water quality thing.
Yeah, it's not an issue for any of our water because of where it connects in the system. It's past us. But Backroom Knox made a good point. That's a pretty good farming area. There's a lot of chickens and dairy cows and stuff up there. And so he's like, whomever runs that page is like on a crusade to, like, he apparently found a farm that's a major farm that supplies to one of the egg or one of the egg places or beef or whatever, and has tried to reach out to them, be like, hey, where do you guys distribute this stuff? Are you going to be sending us chicken eggs that came out of this? Because I mean, there's there was a story from, it was a fox farmer. He was a fox keeper, I guess is the technical term, who'd lost like half his fox population. Like quickly following the fish.
Yeah, I heard a lot of fish they'd already found dead.
A lot of dead fish. The community at large is on a no water notice. Like, you go to the store and get bottled water. It's not a boiled water. It's a do not drink the tap water. Do not touch the tap water. You're getting bottled water for everything.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, and so I don't know. Like it's I don't know the truth of this per se because I have the biased opinion of the source that I used. My Breaking Points, they've been talking about it a lot, and one of their complaints, and they did a thing where like there's these different companies that do like keyword searches on like, so they did this combined algorithm thing where they took CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News for 9 days, I think it was. And from the 9 days of when this derailment happened, so that the derailment day plus 9, and how much airtime on the major news stations the story carried.
Yeah.
And I want to say the 3 major cable news networks combined were like a couple hours over 9 days of coverage on the story. But like comparatively to like days worth of coverage on the balloons,
yeah,
and others and other stories and whether like, and so at least the inference that Breaking Points makes about it, this is a big fucking deal for a lot of different reasons. But the like environmental disaster that this thing is, and the amount of energy and effort it's getting in news coverage doesn't add up. Because I mean, and again, I don't watch CNN or Fox or any of those, so I couldn't say whether it's a valuable reference or not. But it just seemed that their implication is that major media is not covering the story.
And somebody else was trying to tell me that, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
With any amount
I think he was conflating it with another story, because I think there was a story about a reporter in West Virginia that had gotten fired for covering something else, but I think that was all like state.
Oh, I'd heard about that too.
State level stuff.
Yeah,
he was like, "Yeah, I heard like they're not letting reporters in. Like, nobody can talk about this city." I was like, "No, man. Like, I read like a story that's
I
talking
did hear
about
something
this,
about
like,
a reporter
incident,
getting arrested." Yeah,
yeah. I was like, "No, man." I was like, "I read about this story like almost every day."
Yeah.
I was like, "What's been going on with it?"
But you're your AP and Reuters mostly. Like you don't like you're. It's not like you're on a aggregate news site. You're on You're on the bulk whatever. You know, so again, I don't know. Like, I mean, I would. It doesn't bother me so much that WBR is not covering it because they shouldn't be covering it.
Okay, never mind. I'll look on another local website.
I'm just saying, like as far as like the actual news, 6 o'clock news here, it doesn't take much of us. They don't do much of a segment on it, if anything. That doesn't bother me because
I mean, sometimes those editors, whoever makes that call, are just looking at what stories are clicking.
Right, which is terrible, but
right.
Understandable. I mean, on the business side of it, I get it.
Right.
It sucks, but I don't know. Like, it seems to me that this story is getting, or at least the inference is that the story's not getting as much play as it should. Which again, now that I'm thinking about it, is kind of a conflicting idea from Breaking Points anyway, because one of the points they make is that nobody watches Fox News, CNN anymore. You know, like apparently there's like the key demographic that they always talk about in news, which is like 25 to 50, you know, voting age people, whatever. Those are the key demographics and those whatevers, and they're terrible numbers. Like, I want to say, other than Tucker, nobody does over like $1 million a segment anymore, or 1 million viewers a segment anymore. You know, and then Breaking Points is like, we do a couple million per episode, so we outdo them. And so it's like, well, okay, major media is not covering it, but nobody watches it, so it doesn't mean there's not coverage of it. And so again, like I said, it might be that's partially my bias. But anyway, the Backroom Knox thing's interesting. Like, it's an interesting take on it that it was not something I'd considered from initially.
Well, a lot of people don't really think about where their food comes from.
Right. And you know, and you got to think,
I'll go to the store and get it.
Like, what's the major grocer in Knox County? I mean, I'd put a list of 3.
Of the grocery stores?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the major? What do you think the biggest, the most used
Kroger's
grocery store?
Probably the biggest.
Yeah. Where's Kroger's home office?
Cincinnati?
Yeah. And I would think, whether intentionally or not, that Kroger's kind of uses local suppliers a little more than longer range ones. Not that they don't use longer range ones. And I know that Food City, at least, and Kroger does
headquarters doesn't mean center for distribution.
I agree, but I'm still saying, like, so like for the beer companies, for example, like, if you go into a grocery store and
all of it comes out of St. Louis.
A lot of it does, but if you go to the grocery store and there's beer on the shelf, at minimum, like, so we're here in Knoxville, at minimum, if a Kroger in Knoxville has a brand of beer, not just a brand of beer, a particular package of, somebody from that brewery went at least to Nashville to get it into Tennessee Kroger's.
Bro.
You don't get to go, like, in the big grocery stores, you don't go into the grocery store, like, Elst here in town or whatever. Like, to get into Kroger, he can't just go into the Kroger down the street here and be like, hey, I got this great beer, you guys should put it on the shelf. Those managers don't have the right. I actually had a weird conversation with one of the store managers at a Kroger once. He's like, this is the dumbest job you could imagine. So I was like, what do you mean? He's like, everything that's in this store I have nothing to do with. The only thing that I do is people. I don't get to choose what goes where, anything, except for who's working when. Like, that's the totality of his job.
Yeah.
And so the whole point in that is I would think that people that produce things that Kroger might carry that are closer to Cincinnati have a better shot of getting things into more Krogers, meaning I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of Ohio product that comes to our Krogers. Now, Food City being different because they're out of Tri-Cities, and that's why if you pay attention, if you go into a Food City, you'll see more local, smaller breweries in Food Cities than you do in Krogers, because Food City is just up the street, and so like a Fanatic or an Elst will go up to Tri-Cities and sit down and have a meeting with them, give them the whole pitch, and they get their beer in there. So anyway, point being, kudos to Backroom Knox for taking it for putting a look at this situation and what it could mean to us locally, and it's something that's worth paying attention to. But yeah, it's a crazy fucking story. Apparently, like, okay, so this is something I've been thinking about all week, and I'm actually curious of your thoughts on this is, and this doesn't specifically apply to this one, just in general. So if you have a well-regulated industry, right? So whether it's the railroads, alcohol is a well-regulated industry. If you as a manufacturer or producer or supplier or wherever you are in the chain are doing it within the confines of the regulations,
right,
does that absolve you of liability?
No.
Why not? I mean, if the FDA, or the EPA signs off and says you were doing this correctly,
say it would be situationally dependent.
Okay, well, on the
situation
specific,
like
then,
this, I would say I don't know if they could get them for any kind of like federal laws, like you said, because they haven't broken any kind of federal transportation policy or whatever. But they can still be sued civilly by damage done to the city. That might get kind of weird if the city itself kind of federally tried to sue it was Norfolk Southern, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, the city could because of damages to the city. They can't do it on behalf of the citizenry. They can do it on behalf of
damage to the state,
damage to city property, damage to city income, because, if they had any sort of tourism, that's dead. Right. And so they can sue for damages there. And then the individual residents of the city can sue, or they do a class action where the totality of the city gets together into one major lawsuit. But the city proper could only sue for city.
I would think the EPA could still maybe go after them for, even though it was an accidental, discharge of these chemicals. They would think the EPA could probably still hold them responsible for that cleanup. Just like if there's an accidental, oil pipeline leak. I'm sure they were following the guidelines as far as the pipe being so big and the fittings being this and that. But even though there's a leak, I'm sure the EPA could still go after them for any kind of environmental damage and require them to clean it up.
That'd be an interesting lawyer question, because I get it. I don't disagree with you in principle, but it's just it just kind of, because apparently one of the issues,
like I said, I think they in that aspect, I don't think they could get them for violating not being up to code or a standard, but I think it'd be more on that liability side of being responsible for.
Right. Because apparently one of the things that the braking systems are from the 1800s still. There's been new development, but no trained people have.
I saw a story about that. It came up for something that's Trump had voted for or repealed, but then Biden has also had the chance to upgrade these standards and hasn't done it yet as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's something about the
regulation.
There's an advanced braking system that's been developed but none of the
I think I heard it's been around for a long
none
time.
of the trained people want to put it on because it'll be a multi-million-dollar thing to get it on all their cars and all their engines and blah 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 blah.
Right.
So again, I mean, I don't know. I get, but I guess the point is, and as you throw your little side, your little sideways blow at libertarianism or whatever about.
I don't know, just
about
anti-regulation in general.
Right. But the thing is, it's like, well, what did regulations do to stop this? They failed. Because the argument, at least from some players that are more in the know, is that if the new braking system was there, if other, because this goes into, what was it?
Have they found the initial cause? Was it
back
going
in the
too
fall,
fast, or was it a bad part in the track?
Okay, so I
haven't heard that part of it, of how it actually happened.
What I had heard on it is that there is a, like every car before it leaves has a certain inspection process, and that has changed over the years and gotten shorter and less.
Every other car, every third car.
Less involved. And so like what used to be like 2 guys for 5 minutes per car is now 1 guy for like 90 seconds. And what I'd heard at least is that it was basically one of the...
do the old kick the tire.
Yeah,
test.
one of the...
that was good.
One of the axles broke is what I'd heard. It's one of the axles on one of these cars broke, and when it broke... there's 2 axles on the front end, 2 axles on the back end, and when the first one broke, it dislodged the car from the track, and then subsequently cars behind it fall off.
I know it was like a straight derailment, but I hadn't heard much on if they found the initial cause yet. And
so the argument from the person from it was a Norfolk Southern labor rep. So he's an employee. At least the inference that he gets he's like, from what I can tell about it, it looks like one of the axles failed, and when it failed, it knocked the car that it was attached to off the track, and then cars behind it fell off. Is essentially what happened. And his argument was that that's because that failed axle should have been found in inspection, and since we've shortened inspections, that's why. Like, this was preventable if we were inspecting cars properly like we used to. Yeah. Was his take on it. Truth or not, I don't know, because I don't know enough about it.
Some of that changed when there was a supply chain issue, if maybe it was changed that recently.
Right. Well, and one of the things that was mentioned in the conversation is Norfolk Southern is one of the railroad companies that the Biden administration had recently forced the rail workers back to work. They were getting ready to strike and said, no, you can't strike. That whole thing back in the fall. Mm-hmm. And so, again, not trying to remember all the details of that, but I mean, it was all about working conditions. That was the strike was. Right. Is, we got no time off. We got to work forever. And so presumably if you're day 20 of 50 straight or something like that, and you're an inspector, presumably you get a little worn out and don't do as good a job over time. It's not a fault thing. It's you don't get a break.
Right.
And so did that play into this conversation at all? Which I think is, again, another interesting little subtext of the thing. But I don't know. Like, I'm going back to the original question. I don't know. That'd be good. I'd be a lawyer thing I'd like to figure out, because if you're doing it correctly by the standards set forth by your government and the agencies responsible for regulating your industry, I could see the argument both ways on where liability lies. You told me this was the right way to do it. I did it the way you told me to do it.
Right.
And this thing still happened. I did everything I could per your regulations. It's not my fault. I can see that argument playing, and playing fairly well in the legal system sense. I mean, personally, it's your shit. You're responsible for what your shit does. Right. And the damages your shit causes to the community. That's my take on it. You don't need regulation for that take. But I could see it as a play. Or the more specific ones when you get into like big pharma stuff where they get specifically written out of liability on certain things.
I was trying to think of another example.
I did see an article today from NBC News that testing is showing that natural immunity is comparable to vaccine coverage, whatever the word is.
Cool.
I don't know, it just popped in my head because I didn't mean to bring that up. I'm not going on a COVID train. I just thought it just popped in my head because I mentioned Big Pharma on the other side.
Gotcha.
What I don't know. What I'm trying to think of others. I agree. Because alcohol doesn't play that role, even though we have standards in how you can and can't and do and don't. Everybody's liable if alcohol's involved.
Yeah. Well, it's only like a restaurant thing. Like even though you kept chicken up to temp, somebody still got food poisoning.
I mean,
that's more. It gets into that more kind of like.
Well, and that's a really tough one to prove for the victim side of it.
Right.
Like I haven't eaten in a week. The only thing I ate all week was your chicken, and now I got food poisoning. It's like you got bigger issues with your stomach than my chicken if you haven't eaten for a week, and that's the only way you can really prove. You can backwards engineer where the food poisoning came from. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you see it in car companies where they'll put a car out and they'll find something post and do a recall. But I think that's we discovered that we screwed this thing up.
Right. And a lot of cases don't get to that recall level until there's been enough cases of it.
Right. But again, I mean, to illustrate the question we're discussing, is it they're doing that recall? Because I mean, you remember the line from Fight Club, right? That was his job. He was a recall, like he was a recall coordinator or something like that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
The whole thing was there's a formula that they put together that if the math says this many things are going to happen because of this faulty item we put in, and the average of the lawsuit settlements will be this, is that more or less than a recall? If it's less than a recall, we'll let it go, even though we know people are going to get hurt.
Right.
And whether that's probably likely what's at play with the car situation is that it's like, okay, we've got a bad seatbelt lock. What's the math here on how many people are going to get hurt? How much damage is it actually going to cost, and all that kind of stuff?
Right. Is
it worth doing the recall? But that does imply then that, well, no, I mean, I guess if you find the faulty product, then it depends on what the standards preset. If there's if there's regulations, which I'm sure there's rules about seatbelts and how they have to work.
Yeah. Well, people like say you can't put a price on a life, but there's people whose job that is.
Yes, do it all the time. It's a pretty fixed number.
Like wrongful death or whatever, they figure out, average of how much that person would have made for the rest of their life, and they're like, all right, we're suing you for that.
Yeah.
That's what you took away from this family or whatever.
Yeah. Which does make sense, mathematically at least.
Right.
It's a cold way to look at the world, but,
but somebody had to come up with that formula. They're like, we can do it. Like it's.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cold, sad way to look at the world, but you got to put it somewhere, because I mean, if you can't put a price on life, then it's like, well, $10 trillion.
Yeah. All right, you can't do it. I'll do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like whatever. Just like 10. Then if it's a loose thing, and we can just it just depends on the litigative efforts of the victim's family or the people representing the victim, how hard they want to go after it, and especially with the way the legal system generally works, is the lawyer gets a third of whatever the settlement is. So it's in the lawyer's best interest to max that bitch out.
Yeah,
that's why you get all the attorneys that are like, if you don't win, you don't pay.
Yeah,
it's like, well, right.
Their goal is going to just be to settle anyway.
Right. They don't care.
Saves them time, and they get some more money out of it.
Right. They want a third of whatever they can get away with.
That's what they asked for, like $10 million. And they're like, all right, we'll take 2. Like, shit, we only wanted 1, but we got 2 out of it.
Right. And I get $660,000 as the attorney.
Right. Yeah.
So sweet, go me. What else did I see recently that I wanted to bring up? I got Ashley Cap scheduled, not for this Monday, the following one. Excited to talk to him. Want to talk to him. I don't know if Big Ears is scheduled.
Yeah.
But like the specific announcement haven't come out yet. I'll see if I can't get any.
I don't know if some of the lineup, but maybe I might be thinking of something.
Right.
Else.
I think they have like some of the big names, and some of the I think most of it's worked out. They know who's playing where and when and stuff like that, but they haven't announced most of it.
I don't know how big it was yet. It goes across like 20 or 30 venues.
Yeah. And I want to talk to him about using us next year at our new location for some small stuff. the.
Does he still have a hand in that?
That's all he does apparently anymore. Is what the rumor mill has told me that's all he does is he works big ears and that's it. Everything else AC Entertainment does he doesn't touch anymore. Like everything else is automatic. But I want to try to talk to. I'd be curious if he's willing to talk about some of the Ticketmaster issues that have been going on, the Taylor Swift situation, all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
I want to say I'm curious his thoughts on some New York Times or something like that put out a top 50 top 50 cities to see concerts in, and we made the list.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I mean, I
just got curious and clicked on the list. I'm like, well, who are some of the top ones?
Right. And so I'm like, I mean, I'm going to a show this year. I haven't been to a show in a couple of years. Like, I'm going to see Ben Folds here, I think in March. I gotta go find my ticket.
Nice.
So Ben Folds is playing. I think it's Tennessee Theater. But yeah, that that Knoxville Mix thing that Compass and Blank Magazine have put together. It's a really good. It's a free email. It's a weekly email, and it's like a curated list of what's going on. It's not a full list. But it's always kind of packed full of stuff. And so, I don't know. I guess that's a good thing. My only issue with it is what's the best venue in Knoxville?
For
bands.
I would say Tennessee Theater.
I mean, I haven't been to Thompson since the remodel. But
you're not. I don't think you're going to get the sound quality that you get.
Thompson sucked.
Right.
Past tense. I haven't seen anything in there since. I've heard it's better now, but I don't. Yeah, Thompson's not been good. Civic Auditorium's okay. Civic Coliseum's terrible for music.
Yeah.
I would agree. Tennessee Theater, but it also depends on the artist too. You know, like I wouldn't want to see. Like I saw Pumpkins at Tennessee Theater, and it was kind of like, I was like second row. Got to pick. Yeah. That's pretty awesome. But you know, I've seen Pumpkins a bunch of times. Saw them in Orange Peel a couple times. I'd rather see it's Pumpkins. They're too big for like Mill and Mine, but I'd rather see a band like that at a Mill and Mine than I would a Tennessee Theater. Ben Folds
is nice and small. It's kind of a smaller version of the Tennessee, basically.
Yeah, but there's no seating in it, right? It's standing room only.
The Bijou?
Yeah, I've never been in the Bijou.
Oh no, there's seating.
Oh, I thought it was like more like what was the one we went to in Atlanta when we saw Remy Zero?
Yeah, that was a weird, almost kind of like dinner theater.
I mean, they had a couple of tall tables.
They had some
the wall.
like theater seating, but they also had like kind of bigger sections where you had tables and stuff.
But it was what I remember, it was just a huge open floor space. Like it was just a big GA venue. Because I remember just standing around. We didn't sit down.
Yeah, we stood, but I thought there was some seating somewhere. Because I remember there being big like bar tops, like halfway up or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know.
Bijou's nice. The Bijou even has those little side, what do we call little side balcony things?
The Lincoln Assassination Chambers. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. That's what I'm going to call it from now on. Balcony. No, that's not the right word for it. What is that called?
Part of the balcony, but I think they have like a box, basically, balcony box.
Something special people, VIP boxes.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about I don't disagree. Like I see on the different listings that go on, we have some good stuff. The Chicks are coming to town.
Saw that.
Who else is coming? Somebody old's coming. Fuck.
Is it Stevie Nicks?
Stevie Nicks, yeah. Stevie Nicks is on tour again.
If that was a Bridgestone Arena thing.
You know, and so there's some big names coming through. But I'm trying to think as far as like active big pop touring groups, like Tay-Tay ain't coming here.
Is that Taylor Swift?
Yeah. I say that. Actually, I think she might be doing Thompson now that I say that out loud.
I don't think so.
I'd have to double check. I'm pretty sure it's a Bridgestone show.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about that if it was coming or not.
I mean, it's been all over my Facebook feed of people that were pissed off about the ticket thing and because it was a crazy...
This also, was it like Beyonce or someone just... was a big artist that announced the tour and their tickets just went on sale, and apparently Ticketmaster didn't shit the bed as bad this time.
I mean, the functionality of Ticketmaster is one issue, but I still think the whole, like the monopolistic place that they're at.
The Ozzy said he's not going to tour anymore after having to cancel for like getting hurt. And like a week later, he's like, You know, I'm just going to call it quits. I'm done.
God, Ticketmaster even has UT softball games.
Well, they can make some money on it. Eagles are still touring. Damn.
Yeah, Hotel California. Let's do it this way. Let's see what's coming into Thompson Bowling.
It's spelled boiling wrong. Bowling.
The Chicks, Dustin Lynch. Breaking Benjamin with Bush. Blake Shelton. That's not a small show. Carly Pierce. I don't know who that is. Pendleton Whiskey. Oh, PBR. That's
Professional
bull riding, yeah. Thomas Rhett.
Where do they get all that dirt from?
Lizzo.
Back at?
Lizzo on as a Lollapalooza event. It's a student event.
Huh. Basketball.
Cody Johnson, the Kid Leroy. I don't know who these people are. Stevie Nicks, Eagles, Shania Twain. There you go. That's a big name. But
Lizzo's coming back.
Lizzo on her special 2 hour. Kane Brown, the Drunken Dreaming Tour. And this is getting into people named Thompson. Or there's a place in Portland, Maine that's called Thompson's Point.
Noise.
For Billy Strings. So I don't know, I'm cool. Like I'm proud of the premise that we are a top 50 venue city.
But
I don't know what's the venue?
But what's it mean?
I mean, realistically,
what does that really mean?
And obviously it's we had some big comedians came through or are coming through. You had The Machine and
big that came recently. I was like, I would like to have seen that. Comedian wise.
Fuck. Yeah. The Two Bears guys both came separately. Trying to blank it on both their names.
Tom Segura and
Tom Segura and
Bert Kreischer.
Yeah. And then that lady came through. A couple of different girl comedians have come through recently, or are coming through. I think the one hasn't come through yet. Anyway, and so I remember I saw Robin Williams at the Civic. That was interesting. It was fun. It's Robin Williams.
And we saw Carlin.
I never saw George Carlin live. We've had this conversation before. I remember listening to George Carlin tapes.
Yeah.
And buying them at gas stations and driving around town listening to George Carlin because George Carlin's amazing. And as I've fallen into the political bullshittery that this show has become or whatever, I think a lot about George Carlin.
Right.
And a lot about what his general subject matter was. It's like, it's a big fucking group, and you ain't in it. And like that, it's just like there's so much George Carlin that is still apt and accurate, in my opinion, from the 70s and 80s when he was at the top of his game.
Yeah. That
continued into the 90s, and then apparently he was on tour when he died.
Really?
Yeah, I believe he was in a hotel room when he died. Bummer. He was a good one.
It was.
Anyway, way to go, Knoxville. Keep being a great venue. I'll get cool and start being part of the scene again at some point.
I tried to peruse the list. I don't think I saw Asheville on there because I figured they would have been above us.
I mean, traditionally, I would agree with that, yes.
As far as the number of venues, but somehow they still get bigger acts than we do from time to time.
Well, I mean, that's always the thing to be. That's why I hate on Thompson. That's why I hate UT about a lot of shit about UT's influence on the city and the county at large. Going back to, it makes total sense. UT is a state institution, and the state has the right to of eminent domain. And so if UT wants to expand, like their board of trustees meetings this week down in Chattanooga, the entire UT system board of trustees, and that's where they do the thing where they redraw their map. Well, they drew it already, but it gets officially signed off on by the university at large. Apparently, UT is already starting or is purchasing a plot of land on the south side of the river, where the bridge is supposed to. It's the target for where the bridge will end when they build this bridge. This footbridge from Thompson, it's going to go across the river. Like they're already in the process of buying the piece of land where the bridge will land.
It cost was like $5 million.
The bridge?
Yeah,
$100
million.
Yeah, I think the working number that everybody's discussing right now is 70.
It's ridiculous.
It's crazy. I don't understand how it's that expensive. Like, I need to get a contractor on here. I need to get a guy that builds bridges for a living. Be like, hey, man, I'm not saying you shouldn't make a bunch of money.
We're just assuming when we're done in 5 years and inflation's going to stay at this level, concrete's estimated to be at this price in 7 years, and we finally have to get around to buying it.
I mean, again, with the regulations that are probably in place, they're probably significantly different than a road bridge, than a vehicle bridge, because of the weight requirements and stuff like that. They're probably significantly less.
Right.
So, which means it should be cheaper. And so,
right.
what the question to me then goes, if instead of a footbridge in that same location, they decided to build a car bridge that goes over the river over there, because it would be nice. I think that's one of the problems with South Knoxville is it's a little hard to connect. It's not an easy. Yeah. There's only 3. Gay Street's stupid. The Gay Street Bridge is dumb because it goes nowhere. So there's really only Henley Street and was it James White Parkway?
Yeah.
That's really the best way to get across, or you have to weave through all that bullshit to get over to the hospital and then come up Alcoa Highway. And so access to the south side or from the south side to the city and to the rest of Knoxville at large is complicated. But so if it's $100 million to build a footbridge, how much would it cost to build a new Henley Street style bridge? That's got to be like $500 million fucking dollars. And how does that make sense?
I mean, we could look up, see how much the Henley Street Bridge cost when they just rebuilt it like 10 years ago.
I don't know. Well,
that's basically what they tore the whole thing down and just rebuilt it. Pretty sure it was completely taken down.
The cost of construction between the city and the county was $1.15 million in 1930-ish.
I thought they, or maybe
in 2011, the Tennessee Department of Transportation began a major rehabilitation on the project. The project was plagued with delays, most notably when 2 workers were killed in 2 separate incidents from the Britain Bridge LLC. The project was partially completed with the opening of 2 lanes, whatever. The final cost of the project is around $32 million.
Yeah. So that was to redo it. Yeah, I can't remember how much of the guts they took out of it.
Yeah, and so, but I mean, it said a major rehabilitation. It certainly means a significant amount of work, but still $32 million, and that's half of what this. That's less than half of what this new footbridge is going to cost.
Right.
That's crazy. And I, as a Knox County resident, will be pissed off if any Knox County money goes into that. I, as a frequenter who spends money in the city of Knoxville, will be pissed off if any of my tax revenue from the city. Actually, I, as a business owner who owns businesses in the city who pays property tax, will be pissed off if the city contributes any single dollars, which they're already on the hook for a portion of $6 million for a grant match. So remember a couple weeks ago we were talking about like $120,000 or whatever to contract to people to write the grant?
Yeah.
So the grant is for some infrastructure project from the federal government, and it would be the total grant's like $25 million, but a percentage of that has to come from local. And UT and the city have already papered an agreement that says like it's about $6 million that they'll split that, and they're looking for other people to jump in. And one of which may or be, I don't remember. This is like a herd from a herd. This is a multiple levels of rumor, but that there is some sort of guy that owns some land, some commercial property on the south side of the river, who has at least shown interest in contributing to the project because it will help his land value over time. So the city may be able to work that down where they bring in a bunch of different partners on that $6 million match that they only have to pay $3 million of because the university's paying the other $3 million, and they may work that down to only paying $1 million or so. But that's still $1 million. Not that that's a ton in the whole budget of things, but it's still $1 million of city tax funds. And that's only to get, what is it, $25 million or so of the $70 million that this bridge is going to cost. The city asked, the city's legislative brunch or whatever was this week, where Massey and Briggs and Elaine Davis and McKinsey and all those got together and hung out with the city council and the mayor's office, and they talked about the things that they wanted. And so the city had pitched it. It's like, hey, we'd like the state to pitch in $55 million for this bridge. So you take the 55 plus the 25, that puts us at 80.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, 80. where we stand. So that gets us most of the way there. If the state pays off it, but again, I think it's a state university. It is for the university. There's no way to argue that it's not an asset to them. It's not a piece of infrastructure that's really of value to the city at large.
That's arguable.
I mean, it would help property values on the south.
It's just going to be students using that footbridge to get over to South Knoxville.
It would be value to the property that's on the south side that would raise the value of that property, which would then raise the tax base for the south side of the river property that's back in that area. But how much of that is UT going to buy over time, and then it comes off tax rolls? University of Tennessee pays 0 city property tax. I don't know if that's 100% true. I'm pretty sure that's true. I'm actually 90% that's true. So
it's possible.
So if the long term view of this, which the university has stated that they intend to put things down there on the south side, especially once this bridge comes in.
Yeah.
They intend to buy land, put facilities down there that are part of the university. Then it's not. Then any potential value that the city could get out of the use of this bridge is going to be lost because they're not going to get the tax revenue when this university buys these properties up, and they will. They're planning on it. They intend to. And the university gets what the university wants, which is the biggest bullshit part to me. That's what I hate about it. I think that's why the Civic sucks. I think both parts of the Civic suck because UT doesn't want to lose those bands, this venue of Thompson. They don't want to lose that income. They want, I think one of the reasons UT lobbied to get alcohol in Thompson and Nayland was to make Thompson more valuable to be in a venue. I mean, I've heard people talk about it where they wouldn't, this guy that...
we've talked about, the entertainment bookers basically getting the biggest chunk of it. How much are the venues getting for these big things?
I don't know. It's a good question. But...
We kept bringing up examples of...
It's more than 0 if you don't have anything in the room that day.
Right.
And if the one thing that the venue or that the promotion company says that is a deal breaker for them is concessions and alcohol being part of concessions because the promoter gets a chunk of it. If that's the deal breaker and you can't do that because of state law and the university status and blah, 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 blah. So... Because, I've heard, the guy, Mike...
But I wonder how often they move any kind of, sporting event out of Thompson.
Oh, I doubt it.
I
doubt it. I think the
school probably gets...
I think all UT events get, not even just sports events, I think, graduation, they do graduations and stuff like that. And I'm curious. I'd wonder if it's an agreement with Knox County.
Well, they probably got that stuff planned out long more in advance.
Yeah. Sports schedules come out.
A tour gets...
UT's football schedule, which is an easy one because they don't do anything else in that building.
Right.
UT's 24 schedule...
It's already out or whatever.
Is penciled.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, but it's penciled. We know what weekends are home games and what aren't. We don't necessarily know what time of day.
Right.
But we know that this Saturday is a home game, this Saturday is an away game. And I think it actually goes out to 27. They have at least
probably because they talk about it every once in a while. They're like, "Hey, in 3 more years, we're going to play blah 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 that we haven't played since 2004."
Right. And so I'd say both basketball programs are in the same boat. I mean, what else do they do? UT hockey plays at the Civic.
Yeah.
UT volleyball plays in a different building. They don't play in Thompson. Graduations.
I think they do.
They might.
My dad's actually called games there.
Really?
Yeah.
Graduation ceremonies. I remember we had a job fair when I was a junior. There was a job fair in Thompson, but it was a Tuesday afternoon. It's what else are you doing?
Right.
So, point being, I think the university put major effort into getting this things to increase the value of Thompson Bowling for promoters, to get more promoters to do things in there, which again, obviously worked because we're now a top venue and that's the biggest regular venue in town. If we did shit in World's Fair, that'd be a bigger venue.
Yeah. Well, maybe the city looked at, I don't know how much the city spent to redo the Tennessee Theater years ago.
Yeah.
Looked at, they already just revamped a big venue that's...
Well, and we have the stadium coming in the pipeline, the baseball stadium, and they that'll be if they do it well, that'll be a good venue. It'll be fun. I'd see a show there, depending on who the show is.
Yeah.
Widespread Panic. Some Fish. It's probably too small for them.
Possibly.
I mean, they do like Hi-Fi Buys down in Atlanta, which is like the 90,000 seat amphitheater. What was that? We saw Radiohead there like twice?
Yeah, at least once.
They changed names.
Yeah, I think we saw it in the same venue. Yeah, then it was a different venue the second time we saw them.
But I want to say it's like 5,000 seats, but then it's like 50 or 60,000 in the GA
General,
grass area.
Right.
I don't know. Again, I'd like to see. In a King Seth world that I ran Knox County and the state of Tennessee the way I wanted it to, I would move the Civic anywhere, or move a city county building anywhere else, and replace that with a sweet venue, a big new Civic Coliseum at the city county building location.
A little dual venue, having a Coliseum and a auditorium.
No, I would no. Sure, the auditorium. I would do it like a Bridgestone style. You know, maybe not a 60,000. I don't know what Bridgestone's probably 40, 45.
Maybe can't remember.
Maybe not that big, but significantly larger than the current Civic, but also built to be able to handle the shit and bring in some big fuck venues. How cool would it be if one end of the arena, like trying to think, one of the football stadiums does it, like one corner of the pro football stadium is a converted stadium seating thing where it opens up and it's just a big glass wall. How cool would it be if there's a big glass wall that was out to the river, and the backdrop for your rock and roll show was the river and some stupid apartments across the river, but whatever. That'd be another one too. That would have been a cool thing to do with the Baptist property instead of some fucking student housing. Not student housing, but student housing. And the Regal building that got sold and stupid shit. That fucking story, that's crazy. City put up a bunch of money to get them to move down there. And then Regal sold to a different company. And I guess they're still under contract, so they're keeping that building leased. But at some point.
Yeah, I think it just got bought out by a British conglomerate.
I thought it was South African, but yeah, whatever. Some media craziness. Yeah. But it's still the Regal Tower or whatever. But, you know, it's kind of a bummer that at some point in the future that name's going to change and it's not going to be the local company of Regal anymore.
And they may keep it. It sounds very royal and regal.
It is. Like Regal is very regal. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like that's one of the things that there's been a conversation about, you know, like the future of Knoxville and stuff like that, and it gets into a bunch of the political craziness. The Chamber of Commerce's thing we talked about a couple weeks ago about going from an innovation economy to an imagination economy. That is where the Knoxville Knox County Chamber of Commerce sees the future of us.
Innovation.
Not innovation. Coming off of innovation, that's where we are. Whoa. Into imagination.
Imagination.
So it's
doers. We're going to be thinkers.
Well, we're going to be creators. Is really what they're. Whether it's creators like we are. I mean, we're part of this thing. I should go talk to them. I should go talk to the chamber and be like, "Hey, I'm a creator. What are you doing to help me create more?"
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the target. It's artists and musicians and content creators and whatever. That's where they think the economy is going long term, where the workforce is going. And so, how do you adjust?
Be curious to see their business plan on this.
How do you adjust your education system and your infrastructure system and what they like to call civic furniture, which is the dumbest phrase ever, but whatever, to retain good talent from your school systems and attract talent from other places to come in and be part of this economy.
Yeah.
And if that's the future, because I think my guess at it is it's not that the city county chamber made up this idea. That's where I think a larger like U.S. Chamber of Commerce and, people that are futurists of the economy of the United States are looking, going, okay, this is where we're going. This is where it looks like we're going. This is where we think we're going. And so it's Knoxville's chamber reacting to the broader picture of this is where we are going as a workforce. How do we locally try to do the best we can with that? As my guess at it. I don't think the chamber made up the idea. I think they're saying this is the idea that's happening, and this is what a lot of people that know and whatever think's going to happen in the future. How do we get in on it instead of letting it pass us up and then try to catch up? And so that's where the imagination economy.
Imagination economy.
I think that's what it's called. I feel like I might be saying that wrong, but I'm not. I don't think so. Let me see if I can find it. Make sure.
Imagination age.
Yeah. The rise of the creative class. These are some quotes. Apparently that's a book by a guy named Richard Florida that is referenced often in this thing. And so, anyway, this one of the things that Chamber put out is how civic furniture is part of that. And what is civic furniture? And they got into an interesting conversation on the Compass Colloquy. If you're Compass subscribers, you go on their Facebook and you can get on their special insider Facebook page that I'll leak all of it here just for you. But it's an interesting conversation about what is civic furniture. And it's a very weird, very, very weird term. Baseball stadium, multi-use stadium. The civic, all the stuff we're talking about, all the venue stuff that we've been talking about in Knoxville being a top venue venue city is part of the civic furniture. Bars and restaurants, little sub communities, like you have the Old City, you have, Gay Street Market Square proper, all those little like nightlife spots and stuff. That's civic furniture. And so some of it, the question is like how much of that is manageable governmentally, as far as, we're building a stadium and we're spending a bunch of tax dollars on it. That's manageable governmentally. But, there was investment in Market Square by the city, and that's what helped revitalize the private side of it. You have the Happy Holler stuff going on, which we jumped in on. We'll see if that's one that's supported by city work, and because there's some work that needs to be done down there on the streetscapes and and stuff like that, and make it more accessible and approachable. But that North Knox community is growing quickly, and we saw that was part of what we saw when we made that decision. And to attract this new economy. That's really what it's all talking about. So I don't know. I don't understand it. It's just my old manism, I guess. Like, imagination economy. Can't make money off of being creative. As we sit here trying to make money off of being creative.
So I was kind of wondering. I was surprised they went down that route of the imagination side of it. Lean more into that.
Well, it's what is the economics of it, and so like what's the actual work? The actual creator themselves. That is if they have a good creation, whether it's art, music, or a podcast, whether they're creating something that's in demand and people are consuming it. And so for a podcast being an example, it'd be like, are we a big enough podcast that we are creating income and there's ad revenue for that? And as you go down that path, I'd start hiring people. I'd have to hire somebody to manage our social accounts. I'd have to hire somebody to actually engineer the show instead of me doing it myself.
Right.
And so the non-creative part of the creative economy is one of the things you can actually train for. You can't really train somebody to be creative, I don't think.
Yeah, not really.
You can train somebody to be able to function on their creativity, figure out how to be, a better artist,
nurture
techniques
that creativity.
Right. But either you are or you aren't creative. Either you can see, because that's always saying with me, like when you, especially like sculptors and shit like that, like you could, the people do the fucking chainsaws with a stump.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, how do you see that piece of wood and start poking at it with a sharp thing, and all of a sudden it comes out and looks like a big old eagle or something? Mm-hmm. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. And so I'm not that type of creative person. I know that. But there is technique and stuff that's teachable. But really, I think for the economics part of it is on the chamber side of it is how do we create people who are the auxiliary parts of that, whether it's the business side of it and the person who is managing the business of this person's creations, or whether it's, the engineers that are working on the podcast, or, because really, I mean, like for music's sake, like what do you do? Okay, so you have a really vibrant music scene. Where is the economy in that? It's service workers mostly. I would say the most money part of that is the service industry. Bartenders, bouncers, servers, cooks. You have sound engineers, you have drivers that drive the bus from A to B, but as far as the local part of that, who works at the venue? You have the manager who manages the venue, that manages the schedules of who's playing what night and what do I need to have so this person can perform. You get into the big shit like Thompson or Civic where you're managing we need to put the ice on. Well, or a better way, the ice is there. We need to cover the ice because we have this event. Right. We need to clear the ice because we have an ice event again, and back and forth and all that stuff. Or Thompson, where you got to pull up you got to pull up the men's basketball floor to put the women's basketball floor down, and you got to pull up the basketball floor because we're doing this.
Separate floors?
I don't know. I said, as soon as I said that, I was thinking, I'm not sure.
I think he's the same floor.
But I mean, even that though,
they've got the 2 3-point lines.
But even that though, you get into certain, even inside the basketball stuff, you have different tournaments that'll go on there. You have different things that go on there, and they change those. They have more than one basketball floor, I guess is the moral of the story. I'm sure. But you have to change that. You have to take it off. You have to bring in, hell, you got to have the staff that comes in when you pull the basketball floor up. So it's just blank concrete and you're doing a graduation,
right?
A UT graduation. You got to bring in all the folding chairs. You have somebody go out there and line all the folding chairs up, build that version of the stage because you have one version of a stage when you have a graduation. You have a different version of a stage when a band's coming through.
Right.
And so there's like the workers that are the periphery of the industry aren't really the high skill, high demand people. I mean, they're high demand, I guess, but they're not high skill people. I don't know. I'm thinking about this out loud. I'm trying to think about I understand if this podcast blew up and I was doing 5 a week, I'd have somebody that was my scheduling person, that they're all day going out and they're calling different people and they're lining them up on my schedule. And they're working with my schedule so that I know when I have person X, person Y, maybe even have a researcher that, helps me get a little bit of a breakdown on who this individual is and what I need, where they sit in the thing to help me ask, relevant questions of a person or something like that. So I could see if we were big having a staff of 10 people. And, they're 10 people from different professions. Basically, you'd have a manager, you have, again, an engineer, maybe a couple people that just come in and redesign the room and rechange the room around for me. And again, and then I'm doing podcasts for other people, right. And that would expand that as well. But I don't know. I'm open if you have any other ideas on people, what the jobs are around the creative industries.
Well, if we stick to just music, I was trying to think of Nashville's kind of music industry, to where they probably do have definitely a lot more than Knoxville has, but a lot more recording studios.
Right. They do. And I'd be curious what that is nowadays. I kind of
see the venue thing. I don't know if it can really go so far as to them bringing in that revenue specifically just for the music, or if it's just, it just being a spot to go that has food and drinks and everything, or is it just the music that brings them into this bar or whatever? Right.
But I'm just saying, for the employment side, who's working.
Gotcha.
You have all that security staff. You have R-Mark, who doesn't know how to check IDs. And we'll go into that because I'm pissed off about that. But, you have R-Mark that comes in and handles the staff on event day. And I don't know who, I assume Thompson or Civic has staff that does the reorganization of the room part.
Probably, yeah.
But I'm saying who are the employees, if it's an imagination economy, if it's creation economy, we're creating arts and culture, who are the employees? Because again, one of the things the Chamber's doing is advising the school board and the state Department of Education on changes that they would like to see in curricula to help facilitate the future of this economy. And so what are we training kids to do through school in this economy. And again, we're agreeing that for the most part, there are creative and uncreative people, or there are different levels of creative people. And not everybody's going to be the creator themselves. And so that's what I'm trying to think of. Like, what are the jobs that would be created? Or what are the jobs that exist that will be more prevalent as this comes down?
Probably a lot more, I would say, in like web design, a lot more technical.
Yeah, I would say coding and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Computer sciences. That's a good take.
Who knows what direction things are going?
See, like, well, that's one of the things I get confused about. Like, because like, granted, there's some other issues with it, but like, there was a story. There's been a bunch of stories about how Elon cut like 70% of the Twitter staff.
Yeah. I heard something.
Cut a bunch of people, like laid off a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about like when I first heard it, it's like, how many people fucking work there? Like it does, like in my head, like I feel like there's like 30 people that work there. Like, what do you don't do anything. What do you do? You wrote the code. The thing exists. Like, to me, it's like if you were a company that created a chalkboard, what do you do with the chalkboard after you created it? You wait until it breaks and you sell them a new one. You don't constantly redesign, but I guess you do with Twitter and stuff like that. They're constantly making adjustments and changes and shit like that. But like, how many people?
I don't think a guy like walks into a room, like flips on a switch and just sits down and was like, all right. That switch flips off.
Like,
off, I'll just flip it back on.
What I know I'm not is a computer person. Like, I'm not a super good computer person. Right. Like, I can work the software that I have in front of me, but as far as understanding how the software works and what's actually like digitally going on in there, I have no fucking idea.
Right.
Like, I know a lot of analog stuff in sound, and like this thing goes this way and that way, and like I know how the wiring works, but I don't understand digital at all.
I'd say they probably got a pretty sizable staff.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I just, like, in my head, it's just like, what does somebody who works for Twitter do all day?
Depends on your job title.
Yeah, exactly. And so, anyway, but again, I guess I'm pointing out my own ignorance on the topic. I don't understand how many people it takes to make a platform like that operational, like functionally operational. And so, yes, I could see that as a thing. Like, we could, like, that would be a hugely impactful business if something of the size and function of Twitter were to headquarter here and all their employees were here. You know, there's a big stink, like Pilot Corp moved their offices down to Atlanta.
Huh, really?
Or part of their, like I can't remember what it was exactly. It was some subset of their, but it was all the tech stuff that they do as far as like all the computer stuff that manages their fleet accounts, which they're not stealing anymore. But all their fleet account stuff and like it manages their inventory software and stuff like that for all the different, I guess they only do truck stops anymore. They sold off all their regular C-stores.
Yeah.
And so, but they moved that down to Atlanta because at least the story from the Haslam family is that the Atlanta had a better pool of candidates looking for work, mostly coming out of Georgia Tech in that IT set that they were looking for. It's like we wanted to stay here, but apparently there's some bit about the story is like that the Haslams are leaning on UT to try to advance that portion of their programming to get more kids. The Haslams wanted to stay here, but they were looking at it and there's no way. We're not going to get enough people to move up here from other places. Maybe that's changed more recently, but in the timing of it, they're like, we need the candidate pool, and it's just not in Knoxville.
Right.
And in their opinion, they didn't see the sales pitch to get people to come to Knoxville, which apparently they didn't. They missed that one because apparently it's not that hard to talk people into moving here. Although it feels like the state of Tennessee is trying, because I think one of the generational issues politically is one of the weird ones to me. Like, I think all this, I mean, the bill that passed the Senate about the minors getting their gender affirming care thing, I can twist myself philosophically to understand the mindset of people that are against letting kids have these operations and take these gender affirming care things. I can understand it. I don't agree with it, but I can understand logically where it's coming from. Now, the whole drag thing and all the other anti-LGBTQ stuff that's going on in the state right now is not attractive to young people. I don't think anybody in their 20s or 30s is on board with that. I think that is an older generational issue that just hasn't phased through yet. And I think that is something that attracts people from moving to Tennessee of this candidate pool that we're talking about needing to exist and wanting to exist for the pilot example. Yeah. I would say that if you're a gay kid in Georgia Tech that's really good with computers and pilot comes calling and is like, hey, you should come work for us. Cool. Where do I got to live? Tennessee. And it was now, and you're seeing all like what has Tennessee been in the news for recently? Yeah. A lot of shit like this. And if you're seeing that, you're going, yeah, those mountains seem pretty cool. Looks like you got some cool stuff. Apparently you're a great place to go see concerts and shit like that. But I don't really want to move to a state that is actively trying to erase my lifestyle from existence.
Right.
So no thank you. And so I get that on the political front of it. And again, just on an economics front, like I don't understand the value of it economically. As a state, for your own economics, you're actively chasing away a demographic, and not just the specific demographic that you're hating on, but a totality of the younger generation of demographic who either doesn't give a shit about it or fundamentally agrees that they're human beings and they deserve to live the way they want to live. I don't want to contribute to that. And that's the demographic that everybody always talks about is what you want to be attracting. You want young professionals, because young professionals theoretically eventually get married and have kids, and that's how you grow a community. Now, I guess functionally that's a little bit of a problem. It's hard to have yes, you can adopt and stuff like that, but gay people marrying don't naturally have kids. They can adopt. And so I guess, again, if you're twisting your own philosophy on it, it's like, well, sure, we can attract a 20-something to come work here, but they're not going to...
You have kids that are half biologically theirs.
Yeah, they can. What was it? There's a show it's talked about as a process that they would do, like for male couples, that they would basically just take both their sperm, stir it up in a cup, and then inseminate somebody with it. So then it was a question of who's the actual dad between the two of them. Like, instead of it being like, well, you're going to be the DNA dad, or I'm going to be the DNA dad. Let's gamble. Like, I think that's a way to do it.
This is a thing.
It was on a show. I don't think it was not a news program. It was
I don't think doctors would.
I thought it was a funny idea.
Concede to doing that.
It was a funny thing, but again, I think it was a joke. I don't know if it was a joke or not, but I think it was kind of laughing about it. What was it though? That's gonna drive me crazy now. And so I don't know. I think we have a problem in where things like that don't line up with what the state's doing at the same time, which is especially weirdly problematic because we have a local rep we have a couple local reps who are on board with wanting to see Knoxville grow well and bring in this demographic and lean into this new economy that we can be a big part of and blah, 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 but are also going against that part of the thing. Okay, so UT doesn't lose their beer permit.
Right.
I'm fucking livid. Well, Armark didn't lose their beer permit, technically. But UT didn't. They're not losing any alcohol revenue next season in football, and I'm pissed. I think it's bullshit. A $5,000 fine, a $32,000 donation to a substance abuse, whatever, and they get to keep selling their beer. It's fucking bullshit. And again, leans back into what I was talking about earlier on the south side of the river shit.
What kind of violation would a bar get for a third offense?
You would lose your license isn't revoked. Your license is suspended. Usually I think it's 3 to 6 months usually when you get to that point. Where, especially if you're a bar, and that is all you do is alcohol, really, that's basically you're shut down for 3 months. And it's like it's.
So remember somebody telling me there was local like fine dining restaurant that kept getting busted for like not carding people.
Yeah.
They were able to keep, but I think they were doing kind of a game behind the scenes of moving the liquor license into somebody else's name.
Right, and apparently, like I learned that just definitions of things, a suspension and revocation obviously are different, but a revocation is for a location, not for a business. So theoretically, like there's a great.
So they couldn't even like get in another Aeromark style vendor to come in and do it because the facility itself.
Right. So there's a great shithole pool bar that used to be up on Clinton Highway called Breakers. And that was where you went to get coke, get fucked up, and get in fights and shoot people in the parking lot kind of place. That's what it turned into over time. And that's where they got the nuisance revocation over time. Now, as far as straight alcohol violations, they had none. They never got issues with underage service or anything like that, to my knowledge. I'm sure they had a couple here and there over the years because they were there for like 10 years. I'm sure they had a few.
Right.
But as far as, the rules of alcohol service and stuff like that, they were good about it. They did their shit right. They didn't serve to underage for the most part. They tried to do their best to keep things in check or whatever, but it just was the place where people went to go shoot each other after they got drunk. And eventually they got the nuisance and lost their license. Now, I'm not trying to compare the two by any means, but that being said, the Alabama game was this final straw in this list of violations that got UT on the docket to be looked at. What happened after the Alabama game?
Huh?
What happened after the Alabama game?
When they tore the goalpost down?
It could be defined as a light riot, maybe. Maybe riot's too strong, but a light riot. They stormed the field. People destroyed property, stole, broke shit. There was a couple shootings that night that were in and around the post-win activities. Now, as a bar, you're responsible for that. That is what Breakers Law got their revocation for. They got their revocation because of the unruly conduct of their clientele over time. But that doesn't apply to this conversation somehow. Like that, to me, that should have been an added issue. Now, UT's argument on this, and I believe they said this out loud, is that, well, even before we had alcohol, we had things like those parts of things. We had the light riots and stuff happen on big wins.
Right.
And we had drunken disorderly that we didn't serve even before we had beer.
We're still technically a dry campus.
Right.
Yet still
and so their argument to at least keep that part out of the play was that, well, that happens anyway. And it's like, well, I get what you're saying, and I understand that it's 100,000 people. It's like there's, it's huge. Like there's more activity going on in, I don't know, what is that, an acre, 2 acres of space than, in the rest of the county total at the same time. But that's your responsibility. You're responsible for that. Every other bar is. Why aren't you? I don't like that. It bothers me. Like it very much upsets me that there's exceptions made for it. Just because they're bigger and make way the fuck more money than the rest of us, they don't have to play the rules the rest of us have to play.
Well, I just don't think you can equate an event being to a bar. I think it's a big stretch in comparison.
Okay,
and having them be responsible for the 100,000 fans that attended that place.
So when Blue Cats used to be in the Old City, if they had continual issues, they're an event venue. They're not a bar. They're an event venue. They hold events, and sometimes those events are, rock events. Sometimes it's dance night. Sometimes it's hip hop. Whatever. They host whoever they host. And if they had continual issues, that shit was rolling out of there into the public space because of whatever's going on in there, they'd be held responsible for that. University of Tennessee doesn't play by that rule. Just because they have an event, that doesn't mean they should be exempt from shit they're rolling out of their space causing problems. They have to pay for the extra. The city and county cops that are on the extra, traffic control and shit like that. UT pays for that.
If somebody rolls out of the Blue Cats as it was back in the day, pissed drunk, goes down the street to wherever, starts shit there. Is it still on Blue Cats?
Yeah. That's the dram shop law stuff. They serve alcohol, and they serve that person alcohol. Anything related to that person and the alcohol is at least they own part of the responsibility.
When was the last time you heard of that being enforced?
I mean, any time a drunk driver runs over and kills somebody, that's always brought in.
Okay, when was the last time you heard of this being enforced?
I don't have a specific.
Someone drinking and driving, getting into an accident, and then actually getting
put
back on the place. It's rare and it doesn't happen.
It's not. It's really not. When you're suing for wrongful death, that is on the bartender, the manager, the bar itself. I mean, a fucking gas station.
Right.
if you go to pump gas, if you're hammered,
I understand who's supposed to be liable. I'm saying
and
you're upset about it not happening, and I'm saying it's
any lawyer worth his salt is going to do it. They've done it. It's happened. It happens all the time. I don't have a specific. I apologize, but I know it happens.
And I know that's the issue of people like bar hopping, but I don't know how far you can really go back in that line of responsibility.
It'd be an interesting specific case, but I would say if I were the attorney, right?
Like somebody goes to 4 bars, are the first 3 all liable equally?
Yeah, I mean, because the way it's written, the way Dram Shop is written, is that let's say you pregame at home and get fucking hammered before you leave your house, and you roll into my bar. I don't even serve you. I'm responsible to do my best to not let you drive out of there.
Right.
Legally.
Right.
I can be sued if I don't do my best. Now, I can't detain you. But hey, man, you don't need to be driving.
Right.
Hey, man, let me call you a cab. And then as soon as you get in your car and don't listen to me,
you can trespass them,
I call the
but
cops.
You can't force them to stay. Right. That would be kidnapping.
Right. I can call the cop. Like, I'm obligated to call the police and say, hey, this dude came in drunk and we didn't serve him. And I tried to get him to take a cab and he wouldn't do it.
Right.
The only way you get out of Dram Shop shit is something like that. But if you served him, you're fucked anyway.
Right.
Even if, you come in already hammered and got your shit together. It was an issue I had at the one bar often. You'd have people come in and they seem fine. And they'd be like halfway through a beer and just gone.
Yeah.
And you figure out as you do that, they just took a handful of some pills or some shit and used the beer to wash it down. And so the pills start kicking in and they're fucking wrecked.
Right.
But they're obviously intoxicated. It's my responsibility as a employee at a restaurant, bar, whatever, to do my best to not let that person drive.
I agree.
And even if they decide to drive and I call the police, I'm like, hey, I tried, did what I could. It's still on, there is still liability if that person does damages on their way home. Now, if they just get arrested for a DUI, that's not my problem.
Right.
Now, they say that they don't keep track of it, but I would say that if a bunch of DUIs happened and it all traces back to my bar, I'd have problems. Even if I'm doing my due diligence as best I can. Which is a strong exception to the railroad thing we're talking about on liability and doing it correctly or not correctly kind of stuff. But my point is, it's bullshit that UT is somehow exempt because what? I don't like the argument that it's a major event and it's different than regular operations, and don't fucking sell alcohol. There's rules about selling alcohol. Follow the rules or don't do it. If you can't functionally follow the rules, then you shouldn't sell it. You shouldn't have got your beer permit in the first place then.
Right.
It's the responsibility of the city, I guess. The city shouldn't have issued him a beer permit.
I think they're having some pissed off people come football season because I think one of the provisions of it was they were going to have more enhanced training, but I think they were also going to require them to card everyone regardless of perspective, visual age, which
that's been an on and off thing in state and local statute stuff for years. But the way the way, and again, that's another part of it is Armark said that they were going to change their procedure, but didn't say what it was. If I do that in my bar, I can't be like, yeah, we're going to do it differently from now on. That's not enough of an answer for the beer board. How are you going to do it differently to ensure this doesn't happen again?
Right.
Not are you? How? But Armark just said, yeah, we're going to change the way we're going to do it. Well, how? We're not sure yet. We're thinking maybe this or that. We're not sure.
I thought they came out with 2 or 3 things they were doing.
But one of them supposed to be is in the queue, if you will.
It's added 5 hours of training for each person or whatever.
But it's not going to be for each person. The way I understand it, the most likely scenario that they're planning on doing is when you get in line for beer, it's going to be a roped off line, then you're going to zigzag back and forth. At some point in that line, when you're constrained within the roping system, there will be an Armark employee that cards you. And if you're old enough, you can stay in line. If you're not, they kick you out of line. So by the time you get to the head of the line, the person serving the beer just serves you the beer.
Right.
They're not carding you anymore. Okay. That's a decent way to go about trying to figure it out.
I wonder if they've gone cashless yet. There's that story about the Civic.
Yeah. Already
going to that.
Which I disagree with. But, I disagree with as a public entity. I mean, it's owned by the city.
Right.
The city of Knoxville owns it. I'm not okay with the idea that a DMV, a city or the clerk's office or any of that goes cashless. I strongly oppose the premise. I don't think that's bad. It's just bad. I don't like it. It spells I don't like the idea of a centralized digital currency. I don't like if they have a digital US dollar, that comes out, I think it's a bad idea.
Not going to happen.
I hope not. It is something that has been discussed.
I understand it from, I guess, Aeromark's perspective in the stadium case. Because they're trying to speed up sales, basically.
Yeah.
They don't want to have someone have to sit there and fool with money and deal with having to have a chunk of money sitting behind or sitting in there with a bunch of drunk people.
It's a security issue, sure.
Yeah.
It's a speed and security issue. I don't disagree with it.
I mean, I don't like it either.
You know, like
I can see them trying to increase sales just by doing that.
See, I don't know, because you're giving away a percentage of your sales by doing it that way, which cash is cash. You know,
Possibly.
there's no.
I'd say more often than not, you find somebody like, "Hey man, Venmo me $5, man, so I can buy me a beer."
Yeah, that'd be yeah. But I mean, you know, like you can.
Or there's
Apple
a
Pay
will for getting drunk. There's a way.
Sure. You know, and again, but that's another one too. It's like, okay, if that's the system you're going to do with the carding in line, if I'm walking down the concourse with a beer, does any Aramark employee have any obligation to make sure that I'm of age because I have alcohol? Because again, at a bar or a restaurant for that matter, like I am obligated as a bartender. Like if you came down and you brought a kid with you, your kid, you know, you brought one of your kids with you who's 18. And you sit down at the bar and you order some food, he gets a Coke and you get a beer or whatever, and you're sitting there doing your thing. And you slide that beer over to him, I'm obligated to stop that.
Right.
Is Aramark not obligated to stop that?
Don't know.
Again, I'm banking the totality of this off of my personal experience in the bar industry in Knoxville, Knox County.
I don't know if it's a separate license for like a bartending license. Would be, I guess, just your ABC card. I don't know if they have a separate subsection since they're just a contracted beer serving.
But I mean, it is
I don't know.
Again, though, it's like
I don't know. You're asking questions we don't know answers to.
But I know the answer for everybody except for UT apparently, and why they don't have a special permit. They're not different. There is not a special permit for alcohol. You get either alcohol or don't. Now there is issues with you want a beer permit if you're within like 100 yards of a church. You actually have to get a liquor license, even though you're only selling beer. But there's no differentiation. There's a beer, wine, and liquor permit. They're all the same. There's no special there's no special delineation for your license because of what type of establishment you are.
Okay.
And so my questions are, why is theirs different, even though there's not a different license? Why are they not obligated for the same thing?
Does UT hold the license, or does Aramark hold the license?
Aramark holds the license.
Okay, so because you keep throwing UT in there, but it's Aramark that holds the license.
So is Aramark not responsible for the people at their, because the theoretically would be that Aramark is then therefore in control of the venue. It is their obligation.
They're being contracted to provide that service. Yeah.
Right. But it is their obligation. Like, okay, another example would be if you're at a bar anywhere in Knoxville. Like, so again, we'll go back to Blue Cats, even though it isn't there anymore. You walk out of Blue Cats with a beer in your hand and walk down Jackson to go into Corner Lounge.
Right.
As soon as you walk out the door, off the property line, actually off the designated enclosed area where alcohol service is allowed to be outside in Blue Cats is in violation for letting you leave with your beer.
Right.
Now, again, I don't know if it's true or not. I haven't been to a football game in a while, but is Aramark making sure that you are not leaving the stadium with a beer in your hand? Are they obligated to? I believe they are, but are they?
I don't know if they have gate staff.
If
I would say most of their employees.
I mean, at the end of the game,
that's a subcontracted to
right, security,
the county and
right. I don't know who does security there and stuff like that.
That's probably more on security to make sure people aren't walking out with a goalpost or whatever.
With a beer permit, it is your obligation to make sure that alcohol stays inside the confines of that location. And it seems pretty likely that they're not doing that at UT games. Now, I don't know how many people are trying to leave with beers, because they stop service after the third quarter. So if you don't finish your beer through the totality of the fourth quarter, that's kind of weird anyway. But hey, it's halftime. It's a blowout. Let's just go ahead and get out of here.
Right.
Grab a beer on the way out and just walk out the door. I'll bet you don't get stopped. I don't know that for a fact, but I'll bet that's the case. So anyway, I'm mad about UT. I think it's bullshit. Okay, let me take it back. Just say it. Just say it out loud. We're making special exceptions for UT. If you do it that way, I'm not going to be as mad. Just say, it's UT. They're more important than the rest of you. So we're going to make sure that they're happy.
I mean, it's not too uncommon that any kind of big business, any kind of big money maker,
sure, and again,
gets a little special treatment.
I will, but say so. Just say it. Say it out loud. Say we think UT is more important than the rest of your businesses, so we're going to let them get away with things that we won't let you get away with. And then I'll shut up, because that's true. That's the truth. I mean, it just is. The truth is, they don't have to follow the rules the rest of us have to follow, and we're okay with that because they're special.
Were there a lot of violations before the 3 in 1 day or whatever?
I mean, they've had a few here and there. But again, I mean, like, none of the people pouring beer are trained other than to pour beer. They don't have to take they're not taking ABC classes like the rest of us.
Just the person bringing them up has to have the license?
I don't know the name. I don't know how it works because they have this whole fucking thing.
Oh, I thought you said you knew.
Because they have this whole thing with Armark doesn't have enough employees. And so as a workaround, again, something that they can do but nobody else is allowed to do because they're what they do or who they work for, I guess. I don't know how you want to word that. They bring in, they contract, Armark, the contractor for UT, contracts nonprofits to send in volunteers to come work the beer stands. And in return, Armark contributes a certain amount by person or hour or number of beers. I don't know exactly what the deal is. But if you have a nonprofit in Knoxville and you want to make your nonprofit some money as a fundraiser, you can go volunteer to work a beer stand at a UT game.
Sweet.
Yeah. And as I like the guy, the last one was like his 80-year-old military veteran who had volunteered for, I don't remember what the nonprofit was that he was volunteering for on behalf of. So basically he's getting his pay as a quote unquote employee is a donation to the nonprofit he is representing.
Sure the beer pourers are doing this?
Yes.
Because I used to work with a guy. He would work at some of the UT games. I don't know if it was through Aeromark or something else, but he was one of those people at Thompson Bowling that like stood at the top of the stairs and kind of like made sure like you were supposed to be on that row to go before you went down towards the bowl or whatever.
Yeah, but that was whoever does security, which may still be Airmark.
Yeah,
but he worked for them. He got paid. He was a paid employee.
That's what I was wondering, if maybe some of these volunteers are just people doing that, or if these volunteers can actually be beer servers.
I don't know if ushers are. I don't know who does all the work on all the different subsets of it, but inside the Airmark part of the beer service, the actual people pouring beers and selling beers, because again, this guy didn't card a 20-year-old cadet, poured him a beer, took his money, gave him the beer, got cited. Yeah. So I'm guessing that if you're volunteering for a nonprofit, that is an extra ask for a volunteer to go take a class on the legal service of alcohol in the state of Tennessee, which is a 5-hour minimum class by state law. That is a lot to ask a volunteer.
So I'm saying I'm skeptical to believe that they would have their volunteers doing something like that.
That is a fact.
Because like you said, that's a lot to ask of a volunteer. I would think if I'm volunteering for something, you're like, are you going to be like, no, so I'd come help, like, I'll do this and this. But
I know that is a fact in the beer pouring part of it. It is that the last violation, among all of the violations, but the last violation was a guy who was a volunteer for a nonprofit selling beer. Okay. That was his volunteer job. And so whatever, again, I don't know I don't know exactly how the exchange works, but whether it's for every hour he works at the game or every beer he sells or whatever, his nonprofit gets a cut. And that's a way that they do fundraisers for these nonprofits. Okay. Which is, I mean, it's a cool solution to a staffing issue. Because, I mean, again, I understand where Armark's at it. You can't have, I mean, I don't know how many employees they have they don't have a bunch of full-time employees. They have a bunch of part-time people that come in and work events for them. And I don't know how many they have, but that is presumably the biggest event they do. Every home game is the biggest event they do of the year. Yeah. And they don't have enough employees on roster to actually staff it themselves. So a creative solution, which I think they did get permission for that, because they did get permission to let the nonprofits do it as a volunteer thing. I don't know if within that permission was the lack of the service class requirement.
We staff all the food halls throughout the week, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't. Yeah, but then it's a 6-7 day work week. I mean, the food halls are open 7 days a week too.
Yeah,
most of them, not all of them. I don't know. It's again, I think it's bullshit, and I think it's like I said. If you're gonna do it, city, just be honest about it. Be like, hey, they're special. That's it. Our mark is special because they work for UT. Say it out loud, and I'm okay with it. I'm not, but I'll be less pissy about it. Because I mean, that's what I'm pissed off about, is because they're getting special treatment. So no, I'd still be pissed. You're right. What was the other thing? I don't know. It's fucking cold this weekend. It's not ready for that.
Is it still wintertime? It is February.
I don't know. It was fucking 72.
I know.
On Thursday. We had the windows down and shit.
Actually, I thought my eyes were deceiving. I actually saw some flurries last night. I was like, what? Is that flurries coming down?
We saw a few of those.
Oh, shit.
We saw a few of those yesterday while we were playing.
Like, yeah, it's snowing out there. I was like, it's not snowing. It's barely flurries.
Hey, it's snow. There is a snowflake falling from the sky. The definition of what's happening is it's snowing.
Gotcha.
I guess. What else was there that was recent that I wanted to touch on? There's a lot.
There's always a lot.
I'm just trying to think
of
one.
There's news that happens every day.
Nikki Haley announced her candidacy.
Did see that.
I don't get it.
What?
I don't like. Where in her brain does she think she's going to out primary Donald Trump?
It's possible. I mean, I think he lost. I don't know if necessarily lost following, but I think some in the party.
Oh, the party hates him.
Started turning away from him, I guess, when the party itself didn't do so well in the last.
Right, the party hates him.
Election.
I mean, there's no question there. I mean, but I mean, you'll have her, Pence, Pompeo, and presumably DeSantis.
Yeah, that's right.
At a minimum, who are going to split the anti-Trump faction of the Republican Party.
I can't remember. It was like a Axios poll or some big kind of one of the major polling things that basically said like the Biden and Trump that I think it was maybe slim, a little bit over 50, maybe like 53% or something. We're kind of hoping that bothboth of them wouldn't run in the next elections.
Well, I mean, I've made the joke on here.
So I think it's been a growing consensus that neither one of them want either one of those two.
No, right. Like I said, I think I am one of the very few people who actually want this rematch. Just in the off chance that a third party candidate gets in there, actually gets a chance to be like, hey, it's me or these two morons.
All right.
And that enough of the population is going to be pissed off about these two morons that one of those two morons is still going to win, but that third party gets a real, multiple, at least decent double-digit percentage of the total.
Yeah, let's roll the dice on that hope.
I mean, what's the difference? One of these two morons is going to win, either way.
Not necessarily.
But let's let this third party come in and get a real shot and a real part of the conversation for once, or for once in the last 2 decades or whatever. Then hopefully the parties will then have to react to it. Because that's the real, I mean, as much as I want to see multi-parties in the United States more than the two, I acknowledge that it's an unlikely scenario. Something has to get them to shift off of this further left, further right mentality that they've been running on for a couple decades now. And the easiest way to get there, I would think, is a real strong third party showing in something, because then the party itself has to go, okay, there is a center here that we are running away from, that if we keep running away from is going to get bigger, so let's push ourselves back towards the center. Yeah. And then we can get some more reasonable Republicans and Democrats running instead of the crazy ones. Or the ones that can beat the ridiculous ones or whatever. And so that's my hope in this whole thing. I mean, yes, I would love a third-party candidate, libertarian or not, to go in and shock the fucking world and beat both of them. But in a more realistic and likely or possible outcome would be, a libertarian candidate to come and get 20% of the total vote. Enough that it's like, because I mean, I think Joe Jorgensen got 1.5% in this last one.
Federal or state?
Federal. Okay. in the last Trump Biden race.
Yeah.
Joe Jorgensen got like 1.5%, and had the totality of Jorgensen voters voted for Trump, Trump still lost. Or no, Trump would have won. It was close enough that it actually made a difference, but not close enough to scare anybody. So, yeah, that's what I would like to see. But again, going back to the initial point, is like I think most people do not want a rematch, except for the really hardcore Biden people, which there aren't that many, and the really hardcore Trump people, which there's a good amount, but not enough, because they think he'll be the easy one to beat. But I think the majority of like reasonably minded people are like, no, this is dumb. We need some better candidates. But the system's not going to make it for him. I mean, like I said, like I think like mathematically in the polling that's happened, even though DeSantis hasn't announced, there are a few polls that has DeSantis beating Trump.
Really?
Only if it's head to head.
Yeah, I think I saw I guess if it was like head to head with Trump and Haley, that Trump would win, or still has a higher polling.
Right. If it's head to head
at the moment, yeah.
But when the reality is going to be, it's Trump and Haley and Pence and Pompeo and DeSantis. He's not going to win with a plurality. He's not going to win with 51%. He's going to win with 37% because the rest of them are going to split it up and be in the 20s.
Right.
And, all of them are too vain to say, you know what, maybe this isn't my year. Maybe I'll step out of the way, because as long as Trump doesn't win the Republican nomination, that's a win for me. So let's
see. Could get dirty.
It will get dirty, and who is the most likely to win when it gets dirty? Trump is. The one that's the other side of it to me is the more interesting story, though. I think the fact that actual Democrats and the party at large is kind of like, okay, we're not going to say no, but we really wish he wouldn't for Biden. I think that's the more interesting story, is that you have an incumbent president that this happened to Trump too, but Trump being the anomaly of the fucking crazy psycho that he is makes sense, where, Biden's like, okay, the Democrats and Biden are like, okay, yeah, he's incumbent, whatever, but we'd rather have somebody else. And that's a poll that's been out there where it's like
they're just waiting until the very end, and they're going to find him mentally incompetent, and Kamala's going to come in.
Which I don't know.
Kamala's going to come in and save the day.
I think that's one thing a lot of Democrats think is the worst option. Yeah. And I think that's part of the problem that the Democrats find themselves in. They're stuck between Joe's been good, but he's getting old and it's getting problematic, and we need to let him move on. But the rules imply strongly that Kamala gets to run, so let's make sure Joe doesn't die. Because the only thing worse than Joe again would be Kamala.
Okay.
I think that is a true sentiment amongst.
Okay.
There's been, anyway, it doesn't matter. So I don't know. You got a Florida man for us?
I got a. I guess it's not really a Puerto Rican man. Story happened in Puerto Rico.
A guy in the Caribbean.
Yeah, not even a guy.
Oh, a human.
Dog versus shark standoff.
Oh wait, hold on. Before we go into that, I wanted to address your Chive article you sent me, because I was confused.
Oh no, just sending because I thought it was funny.
I thought it was funny too, but it's like, that's the problem with the Chive, or the bee for that matter, is.
Oh no, sorry, this was the Onion.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, Chive Onion. I was humored by it as well, but it's like it's since it's the Onion, it's like, well, is it supposed to, like, am I supposed to, as a person? Okay, so the Onion article was basically how to beat a Rogan fan, or something you should say to a Rogan fan if you see them because they annoy you, or something like that.
No, it was like how to talk to a friend that follows Rogan or something, that watches Rogan. And
it was a bunch of little funny whatevers, but it's like,
I didn't read the story. I just looked at the headline.
Well, what it is, it's like, what's funny to me is like,
I thought it was funny that they write a whole story. They don't just stick to the headlines. They'll actually write a whole fake story.
I mean, it's not really. It's like one of them was like, politely asked them if they enjoy not having a single thought of their own.
Huh.
And then that's what you're supposed to say to a Rogan fan, and then it goes into like why that makes sense as whatever. And so, but the thing that's funny is like, so it's the Onion, so it's supposed to be a joke, and it's like, so as a Rogan fan, should I be offended by this, or should I be laughing at this because it's so ridiculous. Because that's the point of the Onion.
Yeah.
You know, because what was the other one? Like, it was the Onion and Babylon Bee put one out with the balloon. I can't remember what it was, but it was something about like.
Let's see that one.
It was good because it was something about like.
I only like randomly get on there and be like, oh, let's see what kind of funny things have gone on.
It was funny because they photoshopped the picture, and so instead of it being like a round balloon, it was a Chinese takeout box, like the white little Chinese takeout box with a thing hanging off the bottom, and then made some sort of DoorDash. It made some sort of like a DoorDash, like, you know, food delivery joke. Like it was like everybody's freaking out about, you know, Bob from Ohio who ordered some dim sum or something like that. It was like that was the headline or whatever. And I was like, that's a good one. Yeah. So anyway, guy in from around Puerto Rico thing.
Oh, there was a sight of a massive hammerhead shark was a rare treat for 32 travelers on a tour boat in the Bahamas this week. But then something strange still. A dog dove from a nearby dock to confront the monstrous sea creature. So a bunch of people actually like swam out and started, like, I guess the hammerhead shark and the dog were chasing each other around, and the shark finally swam off. But it's kind of an interesting little standoff between a dog and a hammerhead shark.
Dogs are a thing. They have their weirdisms.
Cray.
That's how close to the shore. I mean, I guess, you know. I don't know. I'm trying to think about like how
they only need a couple 2-3 feet of water to really swim around.
I'm saying, like, where's the boat in the story? Is the boat on the dock? So the people on the boat see the shark.
Yeah, I guess they were.
Which means they had to be pretty damn close to the, like,
still in the harbor or something, still in the area.
So the dog would have had. I mean, the shark would have been the boat would have been close enough to the dock that the dog could see the shark from the dock, and the dog's owner was on the boat. Maybe, I don't know. It doesn't say.
Yeah, it doesn't really say.
That the dog felt like picking a fight with the shark to defend.
It was probably a local who had the dog.
Yeah.
Some people take their dogs on vacation.
I hate dog people. I have a dog and I love my dog, and he's an idiot, but I still love my dog. But I hate dog people. I'm so fucking sick of watching people with their fucking everywhere. Chihuahua in the kid's seat in their shopping cart. Yeah. I go in the grocery store and you fucking put your dog in your shopping cart. It's like, that's where my food goes.
I just want to start lying and start sneezing and coughing and be like, I'm fucking allergic. Like, bring your dog in Home Depot, man. Like, what the fuck?
I hate that shit.
I went to the bank the other day and some guy had his little dog in there with him.
Like, if it's a service dog, if it's
actually, I want to say something to the bank and be like, why are you guys allowing dogs in here?
Because they can't not. It's a liability to say anything.
What are you talking about? Almost all businesses have a little placard you can put on there that service dogs only.
But you can't prove it. Hey, I'm sorry, sir. We don't allow dogs in here. It's a medical dog. Do you have paperwork for that? That's none of your business. I don't have to tell you that.
No, whatever.
My medical is my private. That's private information. That's my private medical information. You don't get to know that. You can't require documentation. Like, you can ask, but they don't have to.
I don't want to get on this road.
Okay, they're not required to show you documentation that their dog is a service dog. Is the way I understand it. So you got to go to work.
Yep,
it's lame. Your bosses suck.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really mad at the schedule right now. I'm actually going to yell at your boss about that.
Whatever.
I mean, sober shows are okay. Not mad about doing a sober show. Okay. I'm still coherent.
Remix.
Yeah, apparently not so sober. Push the button too many times. Almost in agreement at gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Go to your favorite podcast provider and like us there. Like I said, I got Ashley Caps, but that's after next week's show. Still trying to figure out the Briggs situation, but I will get him on here at some point. Oh, that's what I forgot about. Son of a bitch. Elaine Davis. You know what? We're going to stop this. I got one last thing I do want to talk about. Why do you keep fading up? That's weird. I'll have to edit that out. Elaine Davis has presented a bill to state to require that any election in the state that has districts that only that district can vote for it, which is essentially Elaine Davis is saying the city of Knoxville, because the way the city of Knoxville does their elections. So quick refresher. City of Knoxville, if there's 5-6 districts, whatever, When you primary in your own district, but when you go to general, the entire city gets to vote on the general. When that occurs, you must. So if this thing that Elaine Davis is kicking up is that if you have a districted municipality, that only the district can vote in the general, which I agree with in principle. I think that's the way it should be. If you're in District 1 in the city of Knoxville, you should be doing your primary, and you should vote for who gets to run for who gets your seat at District 1. The totality of the city input shouldn't be part of it. If it's a citywide race like an at-large or a mayor, then yes, the total city should vote on it. But if it's districted, that you have a District 1 rep, then that person should only be voted for by District 1 voters. I agree with that in principle. But I disagree with it being a state decision to make the city do that. I think the city should do that and change their charter to fix that.
Gotcha.
And so it's interesting. The question is why would Elaine Davis put this up? It doesn't affect her. She's a state districted rep who was voted for by her district. So where, again, square circle, where does a Republican get to tell a locality how they're allowed to do their own elections? Anyway, I wanted to throw that in there because I thought it was an interesting one that's on the docket right now that's going into the state house stuff. Anyway, actual outro this time. Almost Agreement at gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Go to the website, almostagreement.com. I will start working on Voter Guide 23, which will go over some of this weird city election process and the way they do things. And I probably need to call Chris Davis on that, because if the state does make that change, whether you'd have to have that ready by this summer, because that'd be a big ask. Yeah, we're going to do what we do. Like I said, I've got Ashley Capps on the docket, working on Briggs. I need to get Elaine Davis to talk about this thing that we just said, and others. Probably should get Gloria back in. I haven't talked to Gloria in a long time. But yeah, we're almost agreeing. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great day.